If you like true crime, then check out my new channel, Donovan Dread True Crime. I release solved and unsolved cases several times a week. The link is below. I work for a certain 3-letter government agency, and I go on missions every few months. I can't say what we do, but these are coordinated efforts, and multiple agencies are involved. We train for these missions for several months at a time. Then, once ready, we execute the mission. It's hell on the family life, and I eventually want to get into private security at some point, but for now, it's what I do. As you can imagine, our missions can be very intense. A lot of times we deploy to hostile areas, and typically we're back home in a week. But we spend months training for that week. We think and prepare ourselves for just about all possible outcomes. The more you are prepared and the more contingencies you have in place, the more smoothly, shall I say, the mission goes. So we spent 60 days training for this specific mission in South America. And 2 days later, we deploy to our destination. I can't say where, but it's a heavily jungled area where we're at. We have a team of 13 of us, and we are to set up a base camp and then begin reconnaissance patrols. We were dropped off by a helicopter at our destination, and the chopper leaves us there. We have a few days' worth of supplies, but eventually we will be resupplied by chopper. The first day is spent setting up the camp, tents, tables, and chairs, etc. We also set up comms and some intelligence monitoring. Then we spend the next 2 days doing training on how to react in certain scenarios that may arise during our mission. We prepared for this during our training, but we still spend extra time when on site. On the 4th day, we start our patrols into the jungle surrounding our camp. I'm part of a 4-man team patrolling for about 5 hours when my team leader tells me to stop walking for a second and listen. So I do, and he points out this faint sound that sounds like a woman crying. You can barely hear it, but I stood there and I listened, and it was growing louder the more I listened to it. It sounded like a mountain lion in the wild, but there are no mountain lions here, only leopards and jaguars in the jungle. The big cats always terrify me because they're so stealthy, and if one would pounce on you, it's game over. At least there are 4 of us on patrol, and we are all watching each other's 6. We continued our patrol for another 2 hours and really didn't hear anything else out of the ordinary. That is, until we started getting towards dusk. This happened right before the sun began to set. We could still see through the denseness of the jungle. We hear all kinds of animal noises. Then all of a sudden we hear what almost sounds like a stampede of animals come through the forest. We could hear the trees and branches snapping as whatever it was came through. Then we heard this really loud growling, roaring sound that just made the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Now, I've been doing my current job for 7 years, and I was in the Special Forces before that. I've been in a lot of situations, but what I saw next is enough to make you second guess everything about Mother Nature. About 50 yards out, we can all see the trees moving and the underbrush moving as something is moving through the jungle floor. Then out jumps this massive wolf creature. It leaps over this stream that is about 30 feet wide and lands on the other side on its hind legs. This thing is a beast of an animal. We all duck down and hide ourselves as this thing is looking around. I looked at my team lead and I could see the shock on his face and everyone else's. "What the fuck is that?" my team leader whispers to us. I don't know, but it sure as shit ain't natural. Now, we haven't even started our mission yet, and we've prepared for just about every scenario possible, but I can tell you this wasn't one of them. We are all sitting there ready to fire at this giant wolf who is now dropped to all 4s and is drinking water out of the stream. It backs up, lifts its head up, starts sniffing the air, turns around, and takes off into the jungle. We all sit there for another few minutes to make sure this thing is gone before heading back to base. I go back to base and I take my helmet off, and I realized I got this entire thing recorded from my head cam. We all do, actually. I could hear my team lead calling back to headquarters to brief them on what happened. I took my cell phone and recorded what my head cam recorded out there. I played it back on one of the laptops that we had there. 15 minutes later, my team lead comes back and tells us all who are on patrol that he needs all of our recording equipment. He takes it all, and the next day everything is wiped clean. No trace of it. But I still have it on my cell phone. We ended up carrying out the mission and left 3 days later. I still have the video, but I'm terrified to release it because everything can be traced to a source, especially when you work in my line of work. I would love to send you the video, but I just can't. I can tell you that the sound that it made and the sheer power of this thing was truly terrifying. I said before that I was terrified of big cats, but this thing would devour a big cat. It wouldn't even stand a chance. Hi Donovan, I recently found your channel and wanted to share my story. I've never told this to anyone before, and I would like to remain anonymous due to me still being employed in law enforcement. I cannot provide any location details because of this. What I can tell you is that I work in the southeastern United States, and I've worked in law enforcement now going on 17 years. I've experienced my share of strange and weird encounters on the job, and they mostly have to deal with people, because people are the craziest creatures out there from my experience. Very unpredictable and very emotional when in intense situations. Anyways, this happened a few years ago when I got dispatched to an older woman's house who I knew very well. She attended my church for as long as I can remember. I get to her house and she's standing on the front porch sobbing. I go up to her and asked her what is wrong, and she said it was her dog. She had an 8-year-old cockapoo that she was always with. Her dog was outside while she was inside watching TV, and she heard it yelp. She went to go let the dog in, and she saw these strange lights in her backyard and what sounded like a very high-pitched sound right before she opened the back door. As she opens the door, she sees this spacecraft shoot off into the sky. The only thing left was her dog's collar, which was an NFL collar of her favorite football team. So I go back out to check out her story. And there is a collar laying right in the middle of her yard in the center of what appears to be dead grass. The dead grass is shaped in a perfect circle. I asked her, "Do you have a swimming pool for your grandkids? Or have you put anything in your yard recently that would kill the grass?" She said no, and that the lawn care company came by just yesterday and mowed the lawn. So at this point, I'm left scratching my head. This lady that I've now known for most of my life and never had any reason to doubt her basically tells me her dog has been abducted by aliens. In the yard is a perfect circle of dead grass 30 feet in diameter. I quickly walked it off to see. I don't know what to put in my report for this. But at this point, she finally calms down some, and I tell her that I will file a report and hopefully the dog turns up. Fast forward a week later, in the neighboring county's animal shelter, they receive a cockapoo that matches the descriptions of this woman's. Her dog had this black birthmark on its belly, so she knew it was her dog. And get this, the person who found the dog is a farmer who lives 50 miles away. He finds the dog one day after it goes missing. He waits a few days before taking the dog to the animal shelter. Now, how can this dog travel 50 miles in one day? It's virtually impossible. Like I said, I've had my fair share of weird encounters on the job, and although I didn't see it with my own 2 eyes, I saw it right after it happened. The entire thing still puzzles me to this day. Hi Donovan, I appreciate that you're getting the word out on these encounters. This took place back in April of 2006. I was on highway patrol in Kentucky on Interstate 64 in Bath County. I was traveling east on the highway about 2:30 in the morning. I had just passed over the bridge and was approaching a right turn when I saw something running across the highway in front of me. It was dark, but there was enough light from the moon to see it. This animal was running across the highway from my right to left. It ran through an area that had a wide shoulder on the right side of the highway and into a small stand of trees on the left side of the highway. I thought it was a dog or maybe a coyote at first, because it didn't seem to be that big. But as I got closer, I realized that this thing was huge. It looked like it had long hair or fur all over its body, and its color blended well with its surroundings. Its color looked like dirt or sand-colored browns and tans. I pulled over on the side of the road and watched it run into these trees. It was running on all fours right before it hit the tree line. Then it popped up on its hind legs and jumped 10 feet upwards into the trees. I thought I was losing my mind. I sat there for a few minutes trying to process what I had just seen. It was clearly some kind of animal, but it looked like a giant dog or maybe a very large wolf. I thought about going into the woods to look for tracks, but decided against it because I was by myself and I didn't want to get too far from my patrol car in case something happened. I drove back past the area about 20 minutes later, and there was nothing out of the ordinary that I could see. A few days later, while I was on patrol, I stopped at this older couple's house that was close to where this took place. I asked them if they had seen anything strange or out of the ordinary in the woods behind their house. They both looked at me like I was crazy and told me no. Nothing like that ever goes on around here. I did not tell them what it was that I saw, but just said that there was something going on in the woods that may need to be reported to a higher authority. They still acted like they didn't believe me and just brushed it off as kids messing around in the woods. I have thought about this many times since then and wondered if maybe it could have been some kind of wolf or dog-wolf hybrid. It just doesn't seem possible for there to be a wild animal of this size roaming around loose in Kentucky. Thanks again for doing what you are doing, and keep up the good work. This happened in the summer of 2008. It was my first year on the job, and I was on highway patrol in northern Wisconsin, headed west on Highway 77 towards Clam Lake. This is a 14-mile stretch of highway that is heavily forested on both sides. I was working the night shift then, and it was around 3 a.m. when on the side of the road I see this little boy around 8 to 10 years old. He was wearing a baseball cap, blue jeans, and a red shirt. I passed him and I had to do a double take because I was thinking, what is this boy doing out here all alone? I didn't see any other cars or his parents. I stopped my vehicle because I drove past him. Then I backed up to where he was. The boy was walking on the edge of the highway towards Clam Lake, and I stopped and turned my headlights off so he could see me. I got out of my car and shined my flashlight on myself so he could see that I was a police officer. I told him I'm here to help him, and where are your parents? He said they're back at the lodge. I said, well then what are you doing out here all by yourself? Now keep in mind the lodge is at least 5 miles from where we were, and it's 3 a.m. in the morning. He turns to me and says, I'm hungry. I waved him over to come get over into my car and that I'll take him back to the lodge to see his parents. I also said I think I have some chips in the car that you can eat on the way. He started walking towards me, so I turned to open the back door of my vehicle and turn around to help him in, and he's gone. Vanished. I'm wondering, where did he go? I looked all around my car. I looked under my car. And I start calling out for this boy to come back. I'm yelling that I'm here to help and I'm going to take him back to his parents. I was there for 45 minutes calling and waiting, and I never found him. I report this to the station and give them a description of the boy. and the dispatch on the other end goes quiet like the call was dropped. I asked what is going on. He then tells me that this matches the description of a little boy who went missing in this area over 20 years ago. He continues that this happens every 5 years, that someone in the area reports that they see this little boy on the side of Highway 77 between Torrey Lake and Clam Lake. I guess I saw the ghost of that missing boy. I left the department before the next 5 years hit. It was the creepiest and saddest thing that I've ever encountered on the job.